Niti, start recording start ಆದ ತಕ್ಷಣ I'll start. Okay, good morning. Uh, we'll see what we discussed in the last class, and today I'm going to start with the semantic constraints between the classes. Mm, slide is visible, right? ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. Before starting semantic constraints between classes, let me see what we discussed in the last class. So in the last class, I discussed about the containment relationship. What is the containment class? Then how, for what purpose we are creating the containment class and so in order to minimize the number of users relationships, we are going to create a new class called as the containment class, and this containment class consisting of all the objects so that it minimize the number of users relationships. So when we create the containment class, it is the temporary class and it holds all the objects of the classes, right? And containment relationship is an object based relationship because here not all the objects of the classes obey the relationship. Next, we discussed about the heuristics related to the containment relationship. First heuristic is if a class contain objects of another class, then the containing class should be sending message to the contained objects. That is, the containment relationship should always imply a users relationship. For that, we have taken the example of a mail class, put and that is the design of a mail class. There we have considered the two containment hierarchy. One is the broad and shallow containment hierarchy, and second one is a narrow and a deep containment hierarchy that I discussed in the previous class, right? And heuristic 4.6 was most of the methods defined on a class should be using most of the data members most of the time, that we discussed in the last class. And the last heuristic for the containment relationship is classes should contain more objects than a developer can fit in his or her short-term memory, and the maximum number is fixed to 6. That is a favorite value for this number is 6. So this we discussed in the previous class, and one more is last heuristic 4.8, distribute system intelligence vertically down the narrow and deep containment hierarchies. Means whenever we are distributing the system intelligence, we are considering both the containment hierarchies, that is broad and shallow containment hierarchy and narrow and deep containment hierarchy. For these two containment hierarchies, we are considering when the system intelligence is going to be distributed. So today we are going to study the topic called as the semantic constraints between the classes. So what is semantic constraint and how it can be how it occurs between the classes, that we'll see here. So it is a common form, very common for containment hierarchy. So here we are considering the both the containment hierarchy, that is broad and shallow, deep and narrow and deep hierarchies we are considering, and this semantic constraint is common for containment hierarchies to have the semantic constraints imposed upon them. And so once again, if we consider the example of a meal class that we discussed there, right? So meal class, so here, if you want the appetizer first, then the entry next and the dessert at last. So here our requirement is we want in the meal class that we discussed in the previous case, right? Here, so this is the meal class. It consisting of melon, steak, potato, peas, corn, pie, and another containment hierarchy. Here we have the meal that is divided into steak platters, trimmings, etc. Means we have inner hierarchies in the narrow and deep meal class containment hierarchy, right? So here we have the meal, melon pie is there in steak platter, steak is there, trimmings, peas, potato and corn is there, right? And here what we want is, we want the, just a minute. So we want the appetizer first, then the entry next, and we want the dessert at the last. So if this is the case or this is our requirement, then how the information can be captured. So here we are capturing the information in the definition of the class. Means whenever we are defining the class, in the class itself we are capturing this information, and this is the preferred method for capturing the semantic constraints, because it makes impossible for user of the class to build objects that violate the semantic constraints, because we can't violate the semantic constraints when we are defining the class and capturing the semantic constraints. But it is not possible. Means always it is not possible to implement the constraints in this way. Means here we want the appetizer first, entry second, then dessert third, and we are recapturing the information in the while defining the class, right? So, but it is not always possible when we are defining the class and capturing the information. Because if we consider another semantic constraint of the male class, and we expand the definition of trimmings to state that trimming object is a potato and two vegetables. We'll consider this example. See here, one more is there. See here, what we have in the previous meal class, trimming consisting of peas, potato, and corn, right? But here, what it wants trimming objects. A trimming object is a potato and two vegetables, right? But if you want to add one more vegetable, or let us consider that there are four possible vegetables: peas, corn, squash, and asparagus. So instead of peas, potato, and corn, see here, instead of peas, potato, and corn, what we want is we want the peas, corn, squash, and asparagus. Means by replacing the potato, we want to add two more vegetables. One is called as the squash, and other one is the asparagus. Okay, this is our requirement. So here we are discussing about the meal class, right? So in the meal class, what is our main requirement? We want the appetizer to come first, the entry second, and the dessert third. So for this we are defining the class and we are capturing the semantic constraints. Okay, understood. But it is not always possible to implement the constraints in this way. Means first we want the appetizer, then the entry, and the dessert afterwards, right? But it is not possible to capture the constraints always in the same manner, because if you want to change the objects in the different classes, then the capturing the constraints changes, right? For example, if you want the four vegetables like peas, corn, squash, and asparagus, instead of peas, potato, and corn, see here the trimming class consisting of peas, potato, and the corn objects. So this is the previous one. So here this is an example for a deep and narrow containment hierarchy, right? So here we have the trimming class. It consisting of peas, potato, and corn. But now we wanted to change the trimming class objects. Here we are changing the potato objects, and means we are removing the potato object, and we are going to add two more objects called as asparagus and the squash. Okay, this is the condition. See here, for the in the trimming we are going to add peas, corn, squash, and asparagus. Clear? Then here we are putting the constraints that peas and corn is disallowed combination of vegetables. Okay, clear? See here we are adding peas, corn, squash, and asparagus, but while adding the vegetables, we are defining the constraints, or we are putting the semantic constraints that the combination of peas and corn is disallowed. Means we cannot have those two combinations. Then by allowing the remaining three, that is, we can have peas, squash, peas, asparagus, or corn, squash, corn, asparagus, like that. We are going to create a number of classes, right? Here, based on the given. ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ? All of you listening, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so based on the given constraint, what the constraint they have given? peas and corn should not be put it in a same one. Okay, we should not have the combination of peas and corn. We have to avoid that combination. So by avoiding that combination, we are going to create number of different classes. Like we can have the squash meal. Means here the condition given is we need to have two vegetables, right? We need to have the two vegetables. The two vegetables may be the same one, squash and squash vegetable, or peas and peas vegetable, corn and corn vegetable, like that. So here we are going to have number of different classes, right? So we can have the squash meal or the squash peas meal, the squash asparagus or the squash corn. Similarly, so here first we are considering the vegetable as a squash, and along with the squash we can have different combinations like squash, peas, asparagus and corn. Similarly, if we consider the asparagus as the first combination, along with that we can have one more asparagus or the squash or the asparagus piece meal, like that. Next, we are considering for the corn. So corn will be the first vegetable. Along with that, we can have the second vegetable also as a corn. That becomes one class. Corn meal. And second one is corn squash meal. So third one is corn piece is not allowed. Right. See here, peas and corn is allowed. That we need to avoid. So we should not create the corn and peas or peas corn combination class. So only those two classes are avoided, and the remaining classes we are going to create like this: squash meal or squash peas, squash asparagus, squash corn, asparagus or asparagus squash, asparagus peas, asparagus corn, like that. And the third one, if we consider the peas one, peas squash, peas asparagus, right? And peas corn, it is not allowed. Similarly, then we consider the corn squash will be there, then corn peas we are avoiding, and the third one may be the corn asparagus, like that. See, in this way we are going to create number of classes, okay, by avoiding the combination of peas corn, right? So here we are leaving these two definition, that is peas corn meal and corn peas meal. We are avoiding this. Why? Because that semantic constraint is given, right? The semantic constraint is that peas and corn is dissolved combination. Hence, we are leaving out only these two definitions or these two combinations, and remaining classes we are going to create. And when we are go on creating the classes, this is a perfect combination, this is the perfect example for the proliferation of classes. What is proliferation of classes problem? What is the proliferation of classes problem? Guard class problem is different, proliferation of classes is different, right? What is that? Proliferation of classes problem means what? We are gone creating the number of classes, right? Simply we are gone adding or creating new classes, and that problem is called as proliferation of classes problem, right? ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆಯಾ ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು? ಪ್ರೊಲಿಫರೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸಸ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಅಂತ? ಫಾಲೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಆಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಯು?
Yes,
Yes. Then tell me, what is the guard class problem? We have two types of problems, right? One is God class problem, other one is proliferation of classes problem. ನಂಗೆ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಬೇಕು. ಗಾಡ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಅಂದ್ರೇನು? Yes. So in the guard class problem, what happens whenever we are designing the classes? Okay, one class becomes like the server, and the remaining classes becomes client. Means what? All the information we are going to keep it in a single class, and the remaining classes are going to access the data or the information from that particular class. So such problem is said to be a guard class problem. Guard class problem ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ one class will have all the information or all the data members, and the remaining classes are going to simply access the data members or the information from that class. then that problem is called as the guard class problem. Clear? Understood what is the guard class problem is? ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತಲ್ಲ? ಎಸ್ ನಿಹಾರಿಕಾ ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೊತಿದ್ದೀರಲ್ಲ? ಸಾರಾ, ನಿಹಾರಿಕಾ, ಪೃಥ್ವಿ, ಸುದೀಪ್.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So then what is the proliferation of classes problem? In the proliferation, see, in the guard class problem, we are keeping all the information in the single class and the remaining classes are accessing that. Okay. But in the proliferation of classes problem, for this simple problem, or if we consider that for the simple system, we are go on creating more and more number of classes. And that problem is called as proliferation of classes problem. Means even for the system, if 4 classes are sufficient, but instead of 4 classes we are creating more, like instead of just creating 4 classes we are creating 20 classes, 50 classes, like that. And that problem is said to be a proliferation of classes problem. Understood? Here, why this example leads to the proliferation of classes problem? See here, simply we are go on creating the combination of vegetable classes, right? Squash, squash meal, squash asparagus, squash corn, asparagus, or asparagus squash, asparagus corn, asparagus peas, like that. So based on the given 4 vegetables, see here, only 4 vegetables are given, but for this we are going to create more and more number of different combinations of classes, and hence this problem is said to be a proliferation of classes problem. Understood? So here we have taken only 4 vegetables. Now let us consider that one more vegetable is added along with peas, corn, squash and asparagus. One more vegetable is added, then we are going to create more number of classes. Then we are going to create 16 different classes, and if we add one more class, then it leads to the creation of 32 different classes. Like that, if we have n vegetables, then there is a chance that we are going to create 2n minus 2 classes for n vegetables. See here, n vegetable is given. Okay. And for these n vegetables, in the proliferation of classes problem, we are going to create 2n minus 2 classes. Why it is 2n minus 2 classes for n vegetables? So obviously for n vegetables, it should be 2 power n different combination of classes, right? But here we are considering 2 power n minus 2. Why it is 2 power n minus 2? Why it is 2 power n minus 2? Why? Because here the constraint is given. Yes, Sudeep? Prithvi?
We
Yes.
have taken the combination of 2 vegetable and we don't need to add the peas and corn in the
Yes, because that combination is not allowed. Hence, peas corn or corn peas combination is not allowed. Hence, we will have 2 power n minus 2 classes for n vegetables. Now you understood? So this is the best example for proliferation of class problems. And whenever the implementers are implementing this type of system, so they need to avoid this proliferation of classes by implementing the constraints in the behavior of the class itself. Okay, so we have to avoid the proliferation of classes problem. How it is avoided? By implementing the constraint in the behavior of the class itself. So if the constraint is implemented in the behavior, we can avoid the proliferation of the classes problem. Then where you can implement this constraint, that best place to implement the constraint is in the constructor of a class. Okay, so when we are, so you know what is a constructor and destructors, right? What the purpose of using the constructor? Yes, Sarah?
In order to initialize a class, ma'am.
Constructor of a class, for what purpose? Is it for initialization of the class, or along with what we are doing? Basically, constructors are used to create objects in the class, right? Yes. So constructors for creation of the objects in the classes. So here we consider that example, right? So and destructors for destroying the objects which are created in that particular class. Okay. So here uh, uh, while we are creating the objects in the class, we are implementing this constraint. What is the constraint here? This is the semantic constraint given, right? Peace and corn is disallowed combination. So how we can do that? By using the construct or by implementing the constraint in the constructor of the class itself. Okay, so in the constructor of the class itself, we can avoid the proliferation of the class problem. Okay, so in this way, the class refuses to build the objects that violate the semantic constraint. Okay, and in general, the designers are trying to place the constraints as low as in the containment hierarchy as possible. You know the containment hierarchy, both two containment hierarchies, right? One is one is what? Broad and shallow hierarchy, or shallow and broad hierarchy. Second one is narrow and deep hierarchy. So when these hierarchies we are considering, the designers are going to keep these constraints as low as in the containment hierarchy. Understood? So one approach is we are implementing the constraint in the constructor of the class itself, right? But another approach, or we can say this that an alternative method for capturing the constraint in the constructor of the class is that we are allowing the creation of illegal objects with respect to the constraints. Okay, here by using the constructor, okay, we are creating the objects and then we are implementing the constraint. Okay, but another approach or alternative method for capturing the constraint in the constructor of the class is that by allowing the creation of illegal objects with respect to the constraints, then afterwards we are checking the state of the object in the method. Okay, so here an alternative approach is we are going to create illegal objects. Clear? Illegal objects with respect to that particular constraint. Understood? So we are going to create the illegal objects with respect to the constraint. After creating the illegal objects, we are checking the state of the object in each method. So this is the alternate approach for capturing the constraint or implementing the constraint in the constructor of the class. So this is about the semantic constraints between the classes. We'll see the heuristics, 4 heuristics for semantic constraints between the classes. For heuristic 4.9 says that when implementing semantic constraints, it is best to implement them in terms of class definition. Means whenever we are creating the classes and objects, there we have to implement the semantic constraints. So when implementing semantic constraints, it is best to implement them in terms of the class definition. Often this will lead to a proliferation of classes problem, obviously, in which case the constraint must be implemented in the behavior of the class, usually, but not necessarily in the constructor. Then 4.10 says that when implementing semantic constraints in the constructor of a class, place the constraint test in the constructor as far down a containment hierarchy as down allows. Means as low as, means in the containment hierarchy, as below as or as low as possible, we have to place those constraints. And heuristic 4.11 says that the semantic information on which a constraint is based is best placed in a central third-party object when that information is volatile. And 4.12 says that the semantic information on which a constraint is based is best decentralized among the classes involved in the constraint when the information is stable. Means in this case, we are going to make use of the decentralized approach so that we can distribute or place the constraint in such manner. So these are the different 4 heuristics given for the semantic constraint. Right. So next we'll move on to the attributes versus contained classes. So what is the attributes versus contained classes? So once again, here we are considering the containment hierarchy. when we are talking about the containment hierarchy, or when we are designing the containment hierarchies, we have to keep in mind that most classes consisting of the attributes, or most classes will have the attributes, and most of the attributes are distributed in nature. For example, the color of the car, or the weight of the fruit, or the length of the house. These are an example for the descriptive nature of the attributes. And such attributes are not considered containment relationships, because the contained data does not have behavior associated with it. Okay, so they doesn't consisting of the behavior, uh, only they contain the data. That's why they are not considered as the contained relationship or containment relationships. So we'll consider these following sentences. One is, an engine contains pistons. An engine contains maximum horsepower. An engine has pistons. An engine has maximum horsepower. See here, it given four different sentences. We have to check whether these sentences are appropriate for the containment relationships, or the when we are talking about the attributes or the contained classes. So first one is, an engine contains pistons. An engine contains maximum of horsepower. An engine has pistons. An engine has maximum horsepower. So we'll see whether these sentences are appropriate or inappropriate. So the first one is, an engine contains piston. We can say that it's an appropriate one, but engine contains maximum horsepower. This is the inappropriate sentence. Why? Because here uh, we'll say that the piston has the behavior, because the piston contains, sorry, the engine contains the piston, so it is having the behavior, and hence the piston is modeled as a class, while the maximum horsepower is simply the descriptive attribute, and it doesn't consisting of any behavior, because here it defines that it is having maximum horsepower, so it defines the attribute, right? It is the descriptive nature of the attribute, right? And it doesn't consisting of any behavior. And here, when we compare the contain and the verb to have, so the verb to have is less descriptive than the verb to contain. Okay. Then why there is a semantic difference between the sentences one and two? Because it contains piston, it defines the, it contains maximum horsepower, right? So here the piston as the behavior, but whereas the maximum horsepower is simply the descriptive attribute. Okay. So hence these two, there is a semantic difference between these two sentences. Even though we are using the same word, contains and contains, but the piston has the behavior, but maximum horsepower it just gives the descriptive nature of the attribute. So in some cases, several pieces of data may be encapsulated together, and still it is called as an attribute. So when we have the attribute, and this attribute may consisting of different pieces of data, then also it is called as an attribute. So one example, if we consider the role of a bank card is nothing but your debit or credit cards, right? In the domain of the automatic teller machine. So here we are using the concept of ATMs, and by using the cards, we are withdrawing the money. Understood? By using the debit cards. You know the cards, right? Card. ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು? Yes? Hello? Yes. So here we are considering the example of an automatic teller machine. So to draw the money from the automatic teller machine, what we need? What we need? I want to draw the
Card.
Yes, what type of card? Whether it may be the debit card or credit card, whatever it may be. So we have to use the card to draw the money from the automatic teller machine. So then what the card consisting of? So here you have the debit card or the credit card. What it consisting of? What it consisting of?
Card number.
Yes. So the card consisting of the account holder name, right? And the account number, validity of the card. Along with that, we are also having the PIN number. Means the card also consisting of the PIN number. PIN number ellirute? In the back side of the card, yes, at one side we have the account holders details like account holder name, account number, or the sorry debit card, that particular card number and validity of that card, etc. And other side of the card it will gives the PIN number. What it is called as CVV,
CVV.
right? Yes, CVV. In the other side of the card consisting of the CVV. It is nothing but the PIN, right? So the card encapsulates the account and PIN number, but it doesn't have any meaningful behavior because it consisting of the only the account holder name and the card number, that debit card number. Normally it is given in 12 to 16 digits ಇರುತ್ತಲ್ವಾ ಅದು. I think it is 12 or 16 digit number. That means for okay, 12 digits.
16.
Yes, 12 or 16.
16.
16. That number is nothing but the debit card number that is assigned to a particular account holder, right? So suppose if you have the debit card, right, that card consisting of your name, along with your name it also consisting of the debit card, that particular number, right, along with that validity of the card, right? And in the other side of the card it consisting of the CVV. That CVV is nothing but the PIN number. So hence the card consisting of the account details and the PIN number, but it doesn't have any meaningful behavior. So the card encapsulates the account and the PIN number only, right? And it doesn't have any meaningful behavior. Then what is the bank card an attribute of? Okay, then we'll say that, or somebody will ask that, what is the bank card an attribute of? Then the object oriented designer responds for that question as the bank card is an attribute of the system. Understood? So the bank card becomes the attribute of the system. So here the bank card consisting of what, it consisting of two or more data, right? So here, so several pieces of data is encapsulated here. So in the bank card consisting of different data. See here, it consisting of the account holder name, bank card sorry, that card number, and also it consisting of the PIN number and the validity. Right. So this bank card or the debit card encapsulates several pieces of data. Even if encapsulates several pieces of data, then also the card is said to be the attribute, or it is called as an attribute. Hence, here, if we ask what is the bank card an attribute of, then we'll say that the bank card is an attribute of the system. Understood? Any doubt in this attribute versus contained classes? So here we are discussing about the attributes which are encapsulated. Several pieces of data are encapsulated. Then also it is called as an attribute of the system. Understood? Any doubt in this?
No, ma'am.
Then we'll move on to the more containment hierarchies. So here you are going to study different heuristics for the containment. So heuristic 4.13 says that a class must know what it contains, but it should not know who contains it. See here, this heuristic concentrates on a class must know what it contains. Means whenever you are creating the class, then that class must know what it contains, but it should not know who contains it. Means it should not, means the class should know that what it contains, but the class should not know who contains it. Okay, and this heuristic is important if a designer wishes to reuse the abstractions. Okay, this is an important heuristic if the designer wants to make use of the reusability. For this, we'll consider one example that we discussed at the beginning itself, right? We are considering the alarm clock example. So when we are defining the classes and objects, there we consider an example of a alarm clock, right? Consider this example once again. Here we are considering the relationship between the bedroom and the alarm clock. See here, the bedroom contains the alarm clock, means we are keeping the alarm clock in the bedroom. So then it is necessary that the bedroom object knows about its contained alarm object. Means the bedroom should know what it consisting of. So here the bedroom should know it consisting of the alarm object. But the alarm class object should not have any dependencies on the bedroom. Why? If it is having the dependency on the bedroom, then we cannot move the alarm clock from bedroom to some other place, because so there is a dependency between the bedroom and the alarm clock. Understood? So here we are considering an example of a bedroom and the alarm clock. Here we are keeping the alarm clock in the bedroom, and the bedroom must know that the alarm clock is there in the bedroom, right? But the reverse should not be, because the alarm clock should not have the dependencies on the bedroom. If the alarm clock is having the dependency, then we cannot move the alarm clock out of the bedroom. So if you want to move, then whatever the objects present in the bedroom can also should be moved to another. Suppose let us consider that I want to move the alarm clock from bedroom to the kitchen. Okay, since alarm clock depending here, we should the condition is the alarm clock should not have the dependency on the bedroom, right? Then I can easily move the alarm clock from bedroom to the kitchen. Yeah, but if the alarm clock is having the dependency on the bedroom, then if I want to move the alarm clock from bedroom to the kitchen, then whatever the objects are there in the bedroom class, that also are to be affected. Then I have to move all the objects of bedroom class to some other class. Okay, then the reusability will not exist there, so that we cannot. So if the alarm clock is not having any dependency on the bedroom, then only I can reuse that alarm clock at some other place. So hence we are avoiding the dependency between the alarm clock and the bedroom. Bedroom should know that it contains the alarm clock object, but the alarm clock should not have the dependency on the bedroom. Why? Because that is required for the reusability of the alarm clock. See here, if I want to able to take the alarm clock out of the bedroom and use it in the design of time lock safe, if there is no dependency, then simply I can move the clock from bedroom to some other place. If the alarm clock is dependent on the bedroom, then the bedroom goes wherever the alarm clock goes. Means all the objects of the bedroom also should be moved to some other place. So that we need to avoid. Hence, a class must know what it contains, but it should not know who contains it. So if it knows, then this problem arises. This problem, that is, if the alarm clock is depending on the bedroom, then the bedroom goes wherever the alarm clock goes. So they should, hence the alarm clock should not depend on the bedroom. Yeah. So this is for heuristic 4.13. Then 4.14 is objects that share lexical scope. Those contained in the same containing class should not have users relationship between them. So here when we are talking about the contained class and the lexical scope, then we say that the class should not make use of the users relationship between them. So objects share lexical scope are objects that are contained in the same containing class. So here, whenever the objects want to share the lexical scope, and these objects are the objects that are contained in the same containing class. Means all the objects belongs to the same containing class. The reason that they should not be using each other in anchored in both reusability and complexity issues. So here we are considering once again the example of a ATM. So here, which focuses on ATM attempting to get a PIN number from its user. Means whenever you are inserting the, so by using the card, you can withdraw the money from the ATM machine, right? So when you insert the card into the ATM machine, what is the first operation taking place? What is the first operation? Here there exists a card reader. What it will do? So card reader reads the information from the card like the account holder name and the card number, etc. After reading that, what it will do? Guys, what is the next step? After reading the card details. So here, once you insert the card into the ATM system, so card reader reads the information from the card, right? So it reads your account details, etc. What is the next step? What is the next step? Tell me the answer.
It will ask.
It will ask for the PIN number, right? It asks the user to enter the PIN number. So for that, what we require? We require the display class. So the ATM asks the display class to display that information, enter the PIN number. So that message has to be displayed on the screen, right? So once the message is displayed, then with the help of the keypad, right, the users are entering the PIN number into the ATM system. Once the PIN is entered, then the verification takes place, whether the ATM verifies whether the correct PIN number is entered or not. If correct PIN number is entered, then next processing takes place. Otherwise, error message will be displayed. So, right, following all of you what I'm explaining, right? So here, whenever we are inserting the card, so then two users relationships or two interactions are taking place. One needs to display the message for entering the PIN number. Once the message is displayed, what is the next step? The next step is user has to enter the PIN number by using the keypad, right? So after that, the processing takes place based on the entered PIN number. If it is correct, then the processing takes place, and then afterwards the ATM from the ATM you can get the money, or ATM machine dispense the cash. Then the user can collect the cash, right? So here, what happens is, in this case here, display pin and get pin, those two users relationship exist. Here, even though whenever we are entering, inserting the card doesn't have to do with this display or the keypad, right? So the problem with this type of design is that reusability issue exists, or reusability issue arises, because here whenever we are inserting the card into the system, what is the main purpose of the, or what is the main functionality of the card? It is simply reading the information, right? And it doesn't have nothing to do with the display screens or the keypad. So it is not asking, right? It cannot interact with the display or the keyboard. It is the responsibility of the ATM machine to ask the display class to display the message, or it is the responsibility of the ATM machine to get the PIN number from the keyboard. So there is nothing to do with the card reader. Okay. So here, even though the message is shown like this, card reader, display PIN and get PIN, but that is exactly not correct. The problem arises here, because the card reader operations are the functionalities just to read the card information. That's all. Once it is read, then it is the responsibility of the ATM machine to display the message and to get the to get the PIN number from through the keyboard, right? So card reader is nothing to do with these display screens or the keypad, right? And if I want to reuse this card reader in a security door, then what happens? See here, you know that ATM is placed in a room. So in some ATM systems, you can see that before entering into the room where actually the ATM is placed, the door is there, right? To enter into that room, you have to insert the card, so that once you insert the card, then only the door opens, then only you can enter into that, then only you can move near the ATM machine. ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು? Following all of you, right? Yes. So if here we in this particular design, what happened? We have associated the card reader with the display and keypad. but the card reader doesn't have nothing to do with it. It because it simply reads the information. Okay, so it is nothing to do with the display screen or with the keypad. These are two different operations taking place in the ATM machine, right? So suppose if I want to reuse the card reader, since it is associated with the display and keypad, what happens? So suppose I want to use this card reader at the doors of the ATM machine, because if I want to enter into the room, if I enter the card, then the door opens, right? Initially that was there, but nowadays all the rooms are open where actually the ATM is placed, right? So if I want to use the card reader at the doorstep, then along with this card reader, I have to have the display and keypad. Why? Because these two are associated with the card reader. But if I want the better design so that I can only make use of the card reader, then there is an alternate design for this. See here, we have three different classes. Card reader is treated as separate, display is treated as separate, and keypad is treated as separate. If this is the case, then I can simply reuse this card reader at the doors, so that if I want to enter into the room where the ATM is placed, okay, so I insert the card at the door, then the door will open, then I can move near the ATM machine to withdraw the money. So here the card reader is reused. It is used at the automatic teller machine. It is also used at the doorstep. So by using this, we can open the door or we can close the door. So this particular object is reused. In order to have the reusability, we should have the design like that. But if we use this type of design, then the reusability problem arises, or reusability issue arises. Why? Because this card reader is associated with the display and keypad. Whenever I want to reuse the card reader, along with that I have to reuse this, because these two are associated with the card reader. Hence, I will go for the better design so that I can use only the card reader again and again. Okay, so for the reusability, I am treating these three as the separate one. So here, this is the better solution. It allows the ATM to find that it has the card, prompt the user via its display screen, and get the PIN number through the keypad. So these three objects are treated separately. Okay, so these three objects are treated separately, but here these three objects are interlinked together, then the reusability arises. In order to make it reusable, in order to make the card reader reusable, what I will do, or what the ATM will do, it treats these three objects are the separate one, and these three objects are treated as separate one, and these three objects are sharing the lexical scope. So in general, the containing class should use its existing user relationships to accomplish the behavior that the lexical class sharing objects are duplicating. So here automatic teller machine is the containing class. It consisting of three different objects, and here once again we will use the users relationship, but in different manner. Here this is also containing class ATM teller machine. It contains different objects, right? But these objects are interdependent together. Then the reusability problem arises. And if we treat these objects separately, so that the ATM finds its card separately and prompt the user via its display screen and gets the PIN number from its keypad. And these three objects are treated separately, even though they treated separately, but they will share the lexical scope. So in this way, we can have the the objects can share the lexical scope. So here, if we consider this design, what happens? It leads to the violation of heuristic 4.13. So what the 4.13 says? A class must know what it contains, but it should not know who contains it. So that heuristic is violated in this particular design, because this occurs when a number of different classes are dependent on one another in the complex ways. Rather than all of these complex dependencies, the designers wraps the related classes in a containing class. So here each contained object sends a message to the containing class, which then broadcasts the message to the rest of the contained class. See here, if automatic teller machine is a containing class, it consisting of three contained objects: card reader, keypad, and display. In this design, what happens? Card reader knows who contains it, so then it violates the heuristic 4.13, right? So here that says that only the containing class should know what it consisting of, and the reverse should not be. But that is violated here, right? Because the card reader knows who's it consisting of, right? It consisting of whose it is, right? Yes. So hence that is violated. Here the contained object sends the message to the containing class. Then the containing class in turn sends the message to all the contained objects in its class. So that is the case here. Each contained object sends message to the containing class. Then in turn containing class broadcasts that message to rest of the contained objects. Here suppose if we consider this example, card reader is a contained object in the containing class ATM. The card reader sends the message to the automatic teller machine or to the containing class. Then the containing class in turn broadcasts that message to all the contained object which is present in this containing class. Clear? That is the case, which then broadcasts the message to rest of the contained objects are a pre-selected list, depending on how the designer wants to distribute the system intelligence between the contained class and its contained pieces. So hence here the heuristic 4.13 is violated, but the designer satisfies the heuristic 4.1 and 4.14. What 4.14 says? It says that objects that share lexical scope, those contained in the same containing class, should not have users relationship between them. So the contained classes should not use the relationship between them, but they can share the information within the lexical scope. So all the contained objects can interact together, but through the contained class. These contained objects cannot interact directly. They have to interact through the automatic teller machine. Means the card reader can send the message to the automatic teller machine. Then the automatic teller machine in turn send that message to the different contained objects. So here the heuristic 4.1 and 4.14 are satisfied, but heuristic 4.13 is violated. But in order to satisfy one heuristic, another or one or other heuristic needs to be violated. So this is about the heuristic 4.14. In order to satisfy 4.14 heuristic, 4.13 is violated. So here the heuristics 4.1 and 14 are satisfied, but heuristic 4.13 is violated. So this is about heuristic 4.13, 4.14 for the containment relationships. So in the next class, you are going to study about the relationship between users and containment. And the last topic will be the containment by value versus containment by reference. Only 2 topics left out from this chapter. Tomorrow I'm going to complete it. Okay. Any doubt in today's class? Yes. Any doubt in today's class?
No, ma'am.
No doubt. Okay. If no doubt,